popular videos on my channel is one where I talk about the lack of representation in children's TV and film for LGBT characters, which is why I was so pleasantly surprised when watching Netflix's show Anne with an E. Because it's a show based on a children's book that is rated suitable for kids, which has multiple queer characters whose lives don't end in misery. And it's set in a historical period. I just can't believe that this exists. There is still something genuinely revolutionary about having LGBT characters in kids' media. I still get messages on that video from people saying that it's inappropriate to talk about gay people to children, as if children can't be gay themselves or have gay parents or gay friends or gay uncles, as if gay marriage isn't legal and, you know, a thing that exists that they can understand and know about. But it's also pretty revolutionary to have queer representation in historical fiction in a way that isn't just derived from misery. Sometimes I think people have the idea that gay people only sort of popped up during the AIDS crisis, like they didn't exist, then, you know, the AIDS crisis happened and suddenly they're there to have storylines about being ill or sick or dead or grieving for straight and cis audiences to watch and like to win Oscars. I think that the only representation of queer characters in children's media that's also kind of set historically that I've ever seen before was the episode of Doctor Who that ends in a bury or gaze trope. One of them dies. So this is literally something that I feel like is the first of its kind. It's the first time that I've seen something like this on screen. So let's get into these specific characters. We have an elderly lesbian character. Incidentally, she is my life goal in terms of throwing like amazing queer parties with like hella amounts of food and also taking baby gays under your wing and generally being lovely. My dream. Although I will acknowledge the fact that part of her kind of story before she comes onto the show does involve a bury or gaze trope, the idea that her partner has died. This was actually on reading kind of quotes and stuff from the writers and creators of the show. This character is in the books herself and there's not really an explanation as to why she's kind of appeared and come to stay with her family. And so they were like, well, what if the reason why she's come is because of the death of her partner? And what if her partner was a woman? It happens before the show begins, off screen. It's not this kind of like trauma that you're made to kind of live in real time. And it was just like this perfect opportunity to increase the representation on a show from this original source material without it really like contradicting the source material at all. There's also a young gay boy as well, which is lovely. So we have these characters that are spanning different age ranges who have different identities. We get the idea of a woman who has been in this very long-term relationship, who is at a very different stage of her life, as well as the story of someone who's coming to terms with their sexuality. I think with representation, when you have multiple characters with the same identity, it allows you to tell multiple different stories. You don't feel like you're stuck into one trope. This boy is artistic, he's kind, he also has this strength to him, he's trying to pursue his own destiny. And between them, there is this beautiful intergenerational friendship. There is this episode in the show which takes place almost entirely at this woman's house, and she's throwing this very gay party for a load of queer people, basically, from her life that she's gathered together.
To Gertrude, may she be reading over our shoulders for eternity.
To the most wonderful couple, my romantic ideal, Gertie and Joe.
Thank you.
Gertie and Joe. And it's essentially revealed that the partner who died is the one who used to throw the party, and she wants to start this tradition up again and feel some kind of like remembrance and love from it. And there's this scene where the boy tells her that he feels like he's like her, that he's gay too. And she has this reaction that I don't think I've really ever seen before in terms of like a coming out scene, where a lot of the times when coming out scenes happen, you're coming out to a straight person, and so it's very like, I am your mum and I love you anyway, and like, which is all great and brilliant, but it was just so interesting to see that be a scene where you come out to someone who's also gay.
I think I'm like you and Gertrude.
You have a life of such joy before you. Not without hardship, not without bumps in the road. Be safe with those you trust. But when you do find people to trust, the bond will be that much greater. Quite touched by you choosing me as one.
And I bawled like a baby. I just wept, because that was just such a beautiful intergenerational friendship moment that I don't feel like we see in LGBT representation at all. Not only will this not stop you from having a good life, actively the friendships that she's developed, the relationships she's had because she's gay have filled her life with such joy, even as she's kind of in mourning, in grief, was just stunning. And we also have a third gay character who is a closeted gay man who has a lot of internalized homophobia that he takes out on another gay character. And that is a trope that often frustrates me. But again, when you have lots of different representations, I understand the idea of actually this is something that is realistic within the time period as well. You know, you can have multiple different characters who have multiple different storylines and react to their identity in different ways. You could acknowledge the truth of the reality that he's living without making it be the gay experience. Also, I think that this positive representation is not limited to how it might be positive for LGBT people who are watching, right? And not even positive in the way of, well, straight people can see that gay people are great too. But in having this queer party in which the idea of, you know, heteronormativity, of cisnormativity is broken apart, it allows those straight and cis characters to understand the limitations that society is presenting to them and forcing them into. You know, why should women have to be wives first and people second? Why should men and women have to dress a certain way? Why should love between two women be seen as anything but beautiful? It's a way of talking about the queer experience is bound by something other than pain. That if you talk to children about queerness, that far from being something that damages them, it allows them to understand their own reality in a different way, even if they're not gay themselves.
I see the world sharing my compositions everywhere I go. It is an incredible life. If you don't mind artwork and travel, is it something that you aspire to, Diana?
Aspire to?
With your music?
A career, dear. Your piano.
Oh, well, no. I suppose I could keep it up on a recreational basis, if it were agreeable to my husband.
Look around, dear. Despite what you've been told, your life doesn't have to be an exact replica of your parents'.
Okay.
Marriage is wonderful, if love is why you marry. But perhaps you'd like something more than simply keeping a house.
By having multiple characters also interact with these queer characters, it allows the show to demonstrate the different reactions to coming out in different ways. You have the character of Anne, for example, who is very much like oh yeah, taking it in my stride, nothing phases me, which I think is especially poignant because her character is so in tune with nature. It is such a huge part of her character about how fascinated she is with the natural world, and it just feels like such a subtle statement to have the character who is so obsessed with the beauty of nature to see the beauty and the naturalness of queer relationships and love in that way. But it also allowed other characters to have their own struggles with it that were shown to be more about them. It's difficult for me to accept this, not because it's inherently bad, but because I feel like I've been deceived because I know you really well and you hadn't told me about it, or because you're making me question my own assumptions about what I should be dressing like or how I should feel. It wasn't seen as this is something that's inherently bad and people they automatically will think it's bad and they have to work towards acceptance. That complexity was displayed, which was fantastic to see. Basically, I suppose what I'm saying is, for like a gritty reboot, it sure does have a lot of like happy friendships and lovely endings and queer representation. Just saying. It's been a little while since I've done one of these videos that focuses specifically on one piece of media. If you liked it, please let me know in the comments. If there's any other thing, like kind of shows or films or things you want me to talk about, let me know. If you want to help support me make these videos, I'm going to leave a link to my Patreon in the description, along with all of my social media, so you can find me all over the internet. And until I see you next time, bye.